Hey there again, everyone. FG back. So this is a type of video that I've never done before. This is going to be a preview video. This isn't actually a project that's been finished yet. I've been thinking about adding some heat vents to the truck for a while because after adding all the armor plate underneath, that removed the airflow ability to push from the engine bay out the bottom of the truck and be able to get rid of a lot of the heat that builds up coming through the air conditioning, the radiator, of course the heat from the engine block itself, transmission, etc., 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 right? And it kind of all builds up inside that what's now basically a tunnel, because basically there's armor plating pretty much all the way from the radiator all the way to the back of the transfer case housing. So the air kind of has to sort of try to push its way through all of that and find its way out. And then, of course, the exhaust is down there too, and the primary catalytic converters. So you can imagine how much heat's being generated. And somehow I need to be able to exhaust some of that. So I started thinking about venting the hood. I've seen guys use like the Jeep JK vents and stuff like that, the Poison Spider, which are basically just flat sheets of aluminum or sheet steel that are punched out in a press, and then you usually pop rivet them to the hood. And I just didn't want that much of an industrial look. I wanted something to look a little nicer and look a little more OEM style. So what I did was went ahead and hunted these up. I've been chasing these for, well, on and off for probably over 20 years. And you're like, okay, but you haven't owned your truck for 20 years. And you would be correct. I was actually hunting these for my 1992 Grand Prix, which I actually still have. These are the original GM hood louvers from that vintage. The Grand Prix arrived in late 1986 as an 87 model, switching to a front-wheel drive platform. And in 89 and 90, General Motors offered a turbocharged V6 version in the Grand Prix. Those particular vehicles had vented hoods, and these are the vents that they used. And they are very difficult to find. Most of those cars, as you can imagine, have already been scrapped. And the ones that are not destroyed usually are being held on to by somebody, and they typically are usually in pretty nice to excellent condition. So of course they're not going to want to sell any parts off of them either, because they're keeping them as a driver or a weekend toy. So to be able to source these in a salvage yard is usually pretty difficult. They're just not out there. So I've been hunting eBay for a while, and this set happened to pop up for $100, and they look like they were in pretty good shape, and overall they are. They have 6 plastic mounting towers. If you look at the picture that was taken at an oblique angle, you can see that these are basically standing up, and as I mentioned, of course, they're not actually installed. Like I said, this is just a preview video, which I've never really done that. But it is getting to be middle of, actually very late autumn here. Winter's going to be starting in a couple weeks. So up here in Maryland, sheet metal cutting and painting and stuff like that's really not going to happen until the spring, unfortunately. So these are just some photos that I took, and then I put all the parts away for the winter until I can get around to this. Overall, the plan is to mount these as you see them basically laying on the hood there. I'm going to have to work around the structure that's underneath, the hood reinforcing ribs, and figure out what's going to be the best ways to cut these. But I'm hoping and thinking that they should go pretty much as illustrated. I think that they would match the hood line quite well. And my thought is perhaps to paint the center section either a semi-gloss or a completely flat matte black to reduce sun glare off of the hood itself. So it'd kind of be a multi-part project here. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I just figured that I would share these snaps, and when this comes around to some decent weather here, and probably, well, unfortunately, probably really literally 4 months that we're looking at out here in Maryland. So when it gets warm enough to be able to be painting and things again, I will post another video of me actually installing these. I told my brother about it, and he seemed to be a little concerned. He's like, "You've done this before, right?" And I said, "You don't remember that I've cut like 5 or 6 hoods now? This is, I think, my 7th project, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go back and count all the other vehicles, but yeah, it's been something that I've done on multiple occasions. Typically, I've always used GM parts. I actually did find the later period correct hood louvers for the 92 Grand Prix that I was referencing earlier, so those have been on there for wow, over 20 years easy. Possibly close to 25. I've owned the car 28 years. So whenever I did a venting project on a vehicle, I tried to use OEM parts. And actually, that I'm thinking back now, I don't think I've used anything but. On a couple vehicles, I actually used, and it's kind of funny, Nissan. So I guess we're kind of going backwards. Nissan hood louvers from a 280Z. Back in the day, they had a triangular shaped sort of louver that was mounted into the hood, and I used that on my 83 Camaro. So I had Nissan parts mounted on a General Motors, and now I'm going to have General Motors parts mounted on a Nissan. I guess there's some kind of weird symmetry in that. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. That concludes the video, and I will be posting in the spring, and I'll show you exactly how I cut and mounted these. I'm going to repaint these and all the hardware that they came with. The underhood drip trays that General Motors supplies are plastic for the ones that I mounted in the Grand Prix, but the earlier one, this being the 89 to, I think it was 92, maybe 93 style, actually has a steel tray with a steel mesh grill that goes between that and the louver itself. All of those are in pretty rough condition, so they're obviously quite used, but the metal itself is in good condition. It's just the finish, so I just need to sand them down and give them a good coat of paint, and they're going to look very nice. So I'm pretty excited to see how this turns out. So until next time, FG out.